All right, so today we are joined by Christian Thibaudeau of Quebec, Canada, who came to prominence and fame in the strength and conditioning industry through hard work, dedication. He's been in basically every aspect of strength and conditioning that there is, from athletic performance, bodybuilding, weightlifting, strongman, regular personal training, all the way to lecturing and international teaching and speaking engagements around the world, everywhere from Swiss to Australia, Europe, and beyond. Today, we're going to be talking about primarily his education platforms and also getting a little bit more to know of Christian and what he does and what makes him so special, as well as doing live question and answer, as well as some pre-posed questions already. So, Christian, how about you give a little bit of who you are?
Well, you did a pretty good job at it. I mean, and if anybody has watched some of these podcasts before, I really hate talking about myself. It probably because I at the core, I do have self-esteem issues, which actually made me push really hard into the physique and strength training world. I started training because I was pretty much average in every single regard. Maybe my look was even below average. So I needed to separate myself somehow. And I thought, well, you know what, if I get stronger and faster, then I'm going to be a better athlete and it's going to earn me some respect and eventually push that into the bodybuilding area of things, which was a big mistake from my own opinion, both from my reputation as well as for my well-being, my mental sanity. But it did help me learn about the rigor of that activity. But besides that, you did a pretty good job at presenting what I did. I started out training mostly for football, American football, which is actually led me to train the opposite of what every single teenage boy normally trains when he starts lifting weights. Is the first 2 years I lifted weights, I only did leg work. I figured, well, I want to play receiver or running back, so all I need is to run fast. So I would go every day in the school gym, and I would do every single leg exercise there was. I mean, that's probably not smart in inside doing that 5 days a week, but it did give me at least somewhat of an advantage when it comes to leg strength, and it's still my strong suit. Anyway, so after 2 years of that, I realized why girls like pecs and arms, or I thought they did. So I started doing the exact opposite and doing only pecs and biceps for 2 years. And eventually I found the middle ground when I was first supported by an actual strength coach when I played college football. And that's when I started doing the Olympic lifts, doing mostly the big basics and stuff like that. And then I switched to Olympic weightlifting when I found out that when you're 5'8", you're not going to be that good of a football player once you're past high school. And then that's when my interest toward more performance training came to be. And that was the beginning of the story.
All right. So you have your own education platform under the brand or the company name is ThibArmy, which is the first part of your last name. Yeah. So some of the questions that have come out over the past year or so primarily has to do with your neurotyping course. Yeah. Could you give people information as to what neurotyping is and why it helps for coaches to take that next step in their coaching careers?
Well, first, I want to say that I hope that, and we know each other, right? And we love to talk training. I hope this doesn't turn into an advertisement for my platform. I mean, I would prefer to talk training and recovery and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that everybody listening to would prefer that as well. I can still give you an introduction, and it can actually lead to some pretty interesting topics, especially when it comes to recovery, why some people need variation. I posted some pretty cool stuff about that recently. Basically, neurotyping is understanding how someone's psychological profile will influence their training preferences. So instinctively, every client will look for something when it comes to training? Is it like feeling good when it comes, like, I think, good sensations in the muscle? Is it the seek for variation? Do you need to feel excited by your training? Is it mostly result oriented or performance driven? So depending on the client you are, everybody will have its own preferences when it comes to training. And also diet wise, it's important, because the reason why we have our personality profile is that when they saying that, yeah, sorry about that. I just did squats and good mornings. Can you just give me a second? I'm just gonna go some tissue. I mean, we'll
see where this right now is being seen.
That's gonna be one for the bloopers. It's
as his nose is bleeding.
Actually, right. It's because of this. I've been having my nose has been clogged all the time recently, and I've just been abusing this nose drip, and it makes everything dry. So it doesn't take much for me to have a nosebleed. Don't like think that I'm dying or anything like that. It's just the excess of nose drip. Anyway, yeah. So because nutrition is also important, because what happens is our personality profile is in large part due to the brain chemical balance we have. Which neurotransmitter systems are dominant? Which ones are lagging? Do we produce a lot of certain neurotransmitters? Are we really sensitive to them? Do we break them down rapidly or slowly when they're released? And that all affects how our brain works. For example, one thing I wrote recently was why some people need more variation in their training. The reason is that some people need the variation to stay interested, because to be motivated, they need to get an adrenaline release during their workout, because adrenaline will make you feel good. It will make you feel motivated, driven, stronger, more self-esteem. So it's generally a good feeling. I mean, if you go on ephedrine the first time, or if you do speeds, if you go at rave parties, you feel awesome the first time. And I'm not talking from personal experience. So, so the thing is that some people are extremely sensitive to adrenaline, and they break it down very easily. So they need to release it all the time to stay motivated. The moment it comes down, they lose their motivation. Other people, they don't break down adrenaline easily. That's because of their enzyme type, the COMT enzyme. So they don't need to constantly release that adrenaline to be up, being motivated and stuff like that. Now, why does variation provides adrenaline? Because here's the thing. Variation will increase neurological demands, okay? We can agree that if you need to learn a new movement, learn an exercise you've not done before, or it's been a while since you've done it, your motor pattern is not as efficient as if you've done it tons of times. So your brain needs to work harder to be able to do that movement properly, to program that motor pattern, okay? So since the brain needs to work harder, you need to speed up your neurons. You need more brain power, essentially. And the main neurotransmitter to speed those neurons up is adrenaline. So when you have new exercises, when you have to learn new skills, you will speed up your brain because you need more brain power, and you release adrenaline to do so. And of course, the adrenaline will have a systemic effect, increasing motivation, awareness. You're sped up, you're amped up, okay? Other factors involved in variation will also increase adrenaline. For example, doing the A1, A2 system that Charles popularized. I mean, many of the coaches listening to this webcast probably are familiar with the A1, A2 system that Charles popularized because, well, you've studied under Charles. And even those who didn't, well, you know what that is, okay? And Charles always said the A1, A2 system works because of a neurological phenomenon. Well, obviously, right? But he never really explained what it was. Well, here it is. When you are doing two motor tasks, let's say bench press, row, bench press, row, bench press, row, your brain has to switch from one pattern to the other back and forth. It cannot get into a groove. When you do bench press, bench press, bench press, each set, your motor pattern actually becomes more precise, better and better and better from set to set. If you keep the same weight on the bar, normally the sets will actually, the second time you do a weight, it will feel easier than the first time because the motor pattern is more efficient, you're more amped up, more activated. Now, if you need to switch from one to the other, you cannot get into that groove. And with every new set, your brain works harder to program the next motor pattern. And since the brain needs to work harder, what happens? You need to increase brain power, neuron speed, meaning adrenaline. So that's the real reason why the A1, A2 system can work for performance, increasing performance, because it increases adrenaline production. It's as simple as that, okay? And once again, that will give you that jolt of energy, that feeling of being high because of adrenaline. And same thing if you do a CrossFit workout. You have all these different motor tasks going one after the other, and your brain needs to work over time, okay? So whether it's variation within a workout, variation within a set, like a superset or a complex, or variation by changing exercises frequently, every time you increase the need for brain power, you release more adrenaline. So that's why people who seek variation, they are actually seeking the adrenaline response. Oftentimes, you can actually get the exact same thing by chasing a very important goal, okay? Me, I'm someone who seek variation, but I need adrenaline. Just like when I'm doing this webcast, when I'm presenting a seminar, I am potentiated because of the adrenaline. I need it, I crave it. In training, if I don't have a very specific and important goal to shoot for, I will have no motivation to train unless I have variation, because training is not that exciting for me when I don't have a goal. But if I have a goal, like recently, my goal was to work back up to a 500-pound squat. I use a safety bar, which is more equivalent to a 550 squat, but still, I wanted that 500 number because I had not hit that number since in more than 13 years, 15 years, probably, back when I was doing mostly Olympic lifting. So that was my main goal. And for the 8 weeks training cycle, I just stuck with squat, some assistance work, but very basic training. I had zero need for variation because every week my goal was to best the numbers I hit at the previous workout. And I had a very important goal for me to accomplish. So beating those short-term goals gave me that dopamine response that gave me a pleasure response, but also spiked my adrenaline at every workout because I needed to beat the workout. See what I mean? It's the same thing when I do a photo shoot. I need to be fucking ripped, so I will follow the plan. I will not seek variation. I don't want to try new exercises. I just stick to the plan because accomplishing that goal gives me the adrenaline to push at every workout. So that's why many clients, many people actually seek variation. They don't have a precise goal and they are super sensitive to adrenaline. People who are naturally sensitive to adrenaline, those who break it down very fast, they need to spike it all the time, That's also why they don't like long rest intervals. Because if you rest more than 5 minutes or more than 4 minutes, adrenaline starts to go down, and then you lose interest, you lose focus. So that's one thing that the neurotyping system talks about is what kind of training variable, what kind of goal should you be setting, what kind of training program should someone follow, what kind of diet should you follow? Because the diet can also be important to give your brain what it needs. Some people, okay, now there's this trend saying like, the only thing that matters when it comes to body composition, losing fat, gaining muscle, it's calories in versus calories out. And as long as protein is equated, it doesn't matter where the calories are coming from. Well, even if that were true, which it isn't, I actually did a video on that topic. The fact of the matter is there's such a thing as individual preferences. Some people do better on high carbs. Some people do better on low carbs from a brain happiness perspective. Like someone who has, for example, very high glutamate levels, very high serotonin level, they go on a low carbs diet, they'll do fine, because it will increase GABA, decrease glutamate. It decreases serotonin, but it's not an issue because they have plenty of it. Someone who breaks down adrenaline very badly, very poorly, very slowly, under methylators or slow COMT enzyme. The moment they release adrenaline, it stays with them forever. Okay, these are the guys who will get into a traffic jam. It pisses them off, and they will be pissed off for the whole day because of that incident. They got into a fight, it spikes their adrenaline, and chemically speaking, they can't break it down until 8, 9, 10 hours, so they stay amped up and aggressive for a long time. That's slow COMT enzymes and also slow methylation. Methylation and the COMT enzymes are both involved in clearing adrenaline. Now, someone who has very fast adrenaline clearance, fast COMT, over methylators, they can get punched in the face, they get pissed off for 5 minutes, then they can go have a drink with a guy. I mean, they don't get amped up for a long time. These kind of people, they constantly need stimulus, novelty to stay motivated. Whereas those who keep their adrenaline and dopamine high once it's released, normally they are just like putting their head down and they just plow through. They don't care about variation. They don't need it because they get adrenaline either way, because once even a tiny bit is released, it stays with them forever. So of course that's like 15 minutes on a 12-hour course, but it can give you an idea.
Yeah, no, that's a good piece of information, especially the difference in the people who can clear adrenaline quickly and those who, well, once they get it, it's there all day. We all know those types. We all have them in our circles. Question that came in from Martin Gratzner of Austria is, what is your opinion about PRP/stem cells and peptides, i.e. for cartilage? Charles was a supporter of it, and one expert and friend of him at the field of peptide is Canadian. I believe that is Jean-Francois Tremblay, is big expert on that. Yeah. But what is your opinion on PRP, stem cells, and peptides?
Well, I don't have experience with stem cells. It's kind of hard to get in Canada, especially in Quebec.
Yeah.
So I don't have any direct experience with that. If my nosebleed, just let me know again. It looks kind of bad. Anyway, that it just like kills my credibility by 50%. I'm just gonna go sideways, but that's my bad profile. Anyway, like peptides, I have a limited experience with it. I used it personally to heal injuries. I mean, I've used BPC 157 very effectively. The first time I actually tried it was a few years back. I mean, probably like 5 or 6 years ago. I was in Colorado and I was doing snatch grip high pulls. I had like 120 kilos on the bar, and Tim Patterson, the owner of Biotest, walks in and he said, "Oh, that's a pretty cool exercise. I mean, it's violent, it's explosive, but anybody can do it. It's not like a snatch, which is highly technical. So we should film like something like really impressive, like 4 plates aside." See, dude, I have like 2.5 plates. Even when I was competing, I would never use more than 140 kilos. And we said, well, it would be really cool if we film 4 plates aside. Like, do you want a paycheck next week, right? So for the next 3 weeks, all I did was snatch grip high pulls and snatch grip low pulls 5 days a week, twice a day. And after those 3 weeks, I actually hit that 180 kilo snatch grip high pull. And that's actually when I told myself, you know what? You should go back to Olympic lifting. I mean, even when you competed and you snatched 142, you never high pulled more than 40. So like the way your brain works, right? Well, I'll be able to clean at least 190 because I'm pulling 180 here. I'll snatch at least 160. I could win Canadian nationals. Dude, let's do it. And because I'm excessive by nature, I had been training like a bro for a long time at that point, so I had almost zero leg strength. I mean, I had residual leg strength because I trained my legs so much for so long, but like nothing like it used to be. So I said, well, I need to regain my leg strength. So I would squat every single day, like Bulgarian style, like working up to 1 RM. That's what I need. Well, when I got to 500, which is like the number I was shooting for, I tore my left quad. Went to the physical therapist. They say, well, it will take at least 6 weeks until you can train your legs, and probably 3 months until you can train hard. So I'm going to try that like BPC 157 thing that I heard about. And within 3 days, honest to God, I was doing power snatches. So it did work. The second time I used it was a few years later. I was diagnosed with kidney issues. Scarring. I mean, it turns out like bodybuilding days, abuse that comes with bodybuilding. Also the fact that I had a cardiovascular issue, and my doctor put me on diuretics for 8 years straight, which is literally the worst thing you can do for kidney, right? I loved it because I was ripped all the time because you can't hold water but I was constantly dehydrated, so my kidney took a beating. So anyway, I said, well, maybe that BPC 157 can help with kidney issues. And I did some research, and it did show promise. So I tried it, and in the 2 months I tried it, I had like blood measurement, and my kidneys were not back to normal, but there was a dramatic improvement. The doctor didn't know what the fuck happened. Okay. So BPC 157 is definitely something that works. I know it works because I've done it. My friend Chris Duffin used it when he tore his hamstring, when he was trying to deadlift 800 pounds every day for a month. And he used mega doses of, but 800 pounds, it's like 80% for him. So let's put that in perspective, right? Anyway, so, and he tore his hamstring and it healed very, very fast. I mean, I don't have experience with the performance peptides, like those that increases growth hormone, for example, because it's not something that interests me. I was only really interested in 2 things when it comes to peptide, injury healing, and the other peptide I've tried, and you probably all guessed it if you saw my old article, was melanotan to get a deep tan, and it was way too effective. I remember my wife always told me, you're way too dark. It doesn't look good. I said, I'm not that dark. I mean, I was tanorectic. Like, when anorectic people, you tell them, well, you're super skinny, and they still see themselves as fat. Well, I still saw myself as pale. I realized it was too much when I went to Cuba with my wife, and we took some pictures, and we came back home, and I look at the picture. Dude, I'm way too dark. And he said, Christian, that's the day we came in. We had not seen the sun yet. So these are the 2 peptides I've experienced with. The other ones, I honestly, because I don't have practical experience with them, I don't want to comment on them. I know, for example, that something like MK, the thing that increases growth hormone around the clock, is probably really bad because it will make you insulin resistant really fast. Because never forget that when you increase growth hormone, you also increase blood sugar level, because growth hormone increases glucose mobilization. That's one of the reasons why bodybuilders have to use insulin when they are using high doses of growth hormone. Not because, well, it's also synergistic, of course, because growth hormone and insulin will lead the liver to release IGF-1, which is super anabolic. But the other reason is that if you take high doses of growth hormone and you don't take insulin, you will develop severe insulin resistance, and you can even develop a diabetic problem. So yeah, I'm guessing that from my experience, like the healing peptides do work, but I don't have experience with the other ones.
Okay, so question from David Jonas down in Stamford, Connecticut was, please comment further on the role, if any, of cardio work in an athlete's GPP, general preparation phase, the first one of a 5-month off season.
That's actually a discussion I had with Ben Prentice a while ago. We talked about the need for cardiovascular training in hockey players. and we both agree that, you know, cardio has a bad name, has a bad rep. With athletes I'm training, especially hockey players, we always use cardiovascular training in the first phases of training, always. Not necessarily because it's super important for that sport. I mean, if we're talking about a sport like soccer, of course it's important. But if we're talking about a sport like football, like hockey, like stop and go sport, power sport, it's still important. For sports like hockey, for example, an efficient cardiovascular system allows you to recover between shifts. I mean, it never is the main energy system used in the performance of your sport in hockey, but it is the main energy system used to clear out the metabolites, recover between sets, reestablish ATP, CP stores, and also create pyruvate and stuff like that. So it's really needed. Also, what I found, two things. First, the more efficient your cardiovascular system is, and I'm not just talking about the heart itself, I'm talking about the actual vascular system. Could be the capillaries surrounding the muscles, could be the arteries and the veins, like delivering blood, liver oxygen. The better it is, the faster you recover. The faster you recover between sets, especially when you have a higher volume of work or when you're doing higher reps. Like, I've seen power lifters, I've been on that side of the spectrum myself, getting completely out of breath after a set of 6 reps on squats. I mean, that will negatively affect the quality of your workout. First, you're going to have to wait like 6 minutes to be able to perform the next set of squat at a high level. It also will kill your motivation. You know you're going to suffer. I mean, even if you try to block it out, even if you're hardcore, if you know it's going to suck, it will increase your stress response. There's no way around it, okay? Now, other thing that I believe is that a better cardiovascular system will make it easier to deliver nutrients to the muscles during the recovery period. So even from an hypertrophy perspective, it will facilitate muscle growth and recovery, okay? Now, one theory I have, and this is just a theory, but I really think there's a strong basis for it. When we are talking about natural people who are not using anabolics, okay? The effectiveness, the efficiency, how strong your cardiovascular system is very important to allow you to build muscle. I don't believe the way the body works, it will not allow you to build muscle and carry muscle that you can't support properly. That's one thing that people don't realize, is that muscle is a metabolically active tissue. It needs oxygen, it needs fuel, it needs support. And most of that support comes from the cardiovascular system, either the heart itself, the blood vessels, the capillaries, okay? And so if the support system is not strong enough for the muscle you want to build, the body will not allow you to build that muscle. I don't believe it does, because it will be dangerous. And if you still find a way to build that muscle, you would actually have probably a decrease in quality of life, decrease in recovery, and probably a decrease in performance, because you would produce too much CO2 for what you can clear out. That's one thing that people don't realize. If you've done a CrossFit workout or a very intense metabolic conditioning circuit or strongman work, when you hit the wall, right, you can't breathe. You're gasping for air. The reason why that happens is not necessarily the oxygen depth that we think it does. It's because your body has too much CO2. It just can't clear it out. It can't clear it out. So the ratio of oxygen and CO2 it doesn't work. So you need to clear that CO2 out more easily. And the more muscle you have, the more CO2 you produce for the same activity. That's why, for example, in CrossFit, those with the better motor, the endurance beasts, are rarely the big guys. I mean, it's a fact. If you carry more muscle, you produce more CO2, and it's much harder to have good resistance, good endurance. You can still do it through training, but it's much harder. Now, I believe that one of the reasons why we see so many cardiovascular issues with bodybuilders nowadays, of course, like steroids and stuff like that, it will increase It will increase bad cholesterol. It will just turn your lipid profile to shit. It increases blood pressure, all kinds of bad things for the heart, cardiac hypertrophy, but also because it allows you, it forces the body to build the muscle the body would not allow you to build because your cardiovascular system can't support it. So just to backtrack to your questions, I absolutely believe that cardiovascular work or energy systems work should be included in the training of athletes, even power athletes like shot putters, even though it's not specific. There's a period to develop general fitness. And the higher your general fitness is, the higher your specific fitness can become. Now, there's a caveat here. If you're in a power sport, if you do too much endurance work, well, you could actually have a conversion of fast twitch fibers toward intermediate fibers and intermediate toward slow twitch fibers. So there's a dose relation. We don't want to do too much either, but we certainly want to increase your cardiovascular capacities when working with athletes.
Yeah. Well, it's like on that point of even with shot putters, when you take a look at a shot put competition, they'll have between 3 to 6 throws, depending on the level of the competition, depending on the location, and depending on the round of the competition. They might have 3 just to qualify for the next round. And then in that final round, they might get 3. And then if they're in the top 6 or 8 or even 12, they'll get a further 3. And say there's a tie, they're going to get another throw. So if they're able to recover better between, their overall performance on every individual throw is going to be higher. Now, in the lower rounds, they're going to have greater rest between their attempts. But as they get further into the competition, that rest period between throw attempts shrinks. And the same goes for events like javelin or pole vault. They get these very long rest intervals at the start, but as the competition progresses, that rest interval decreases. So if they're able to recover faster and be able to perform at that higher level, it's going to make a difference. In 2019, the World Championships for shot put, first and second was decided by 1 centimeter. They're throwing a rock 70 feet, and this was the difference between first and second. Now, say the guy in second was leading, and this was the last throw, and the guy wasn't recovered to be able to throw that 1 centimeter further. He just lost gold and $100,000.
Yeah.
So that difference can make it huge, and when you go through any sport, it's going to be a big deal.
Also, one thing you need to consider, like 2 things. First, when you're in competition, even though there's a lot of time between attempts and rounds and stuff like that, there's still a lot of stress. So your heart rate will stay elevated. That's not cardiovascular work, but you're still taxing the cardiovascular system. So someone with a stronger heart everybody will get a heart rate elevation, but it will be in manageable levels. That's the first thing. Second thing, okay? Years ago, I remember, and Charles even wrote about it, the physical tests in the SWAT teams in police and the militaries and stuff like that was centered around cardiovascular work. In Quebec, if you want to go into the elite teams, it's all cardiovascular testing. Cardio in the pool, on the track, whatever. It's only cardiovascular work. And you look at the SWAT guys here; they're all like 175 pounds. And I questioned, and Charles also questioned it. Why would you do only cardio work for the SWAT team? And the reasoning is simple. And I learned this when my wife did the physical testing for the provincial police. I'm going to give you an example. The final physical test for provincial police it's a circuit. So it lasts roughly like 5 minutes. You run through hoops and you crawl around stuff. And at the end, the very end of the circuit, you're holding a gun with a laser, and it has to stay pointed in the middle of a target for 30 seconds. So once you accumulate 30 seconds, your round is over, okay? And a lot of people who would kill it during the circuit would fail the test because at the end, they couldn't stay on target for 30 seconds. Why? Because the faster your heart rate goes, the less precise you are, the more shaking you'll have, okay? So actually, in sports requiring technical precision, especially fine motor skill. The more your heart rate is elevated, the less precision you have. So the stronger your cardiovascular system is, the less it will elevate, because with each beat, your heart will send more blood, so it doesn't need to increase the beating. So you stay a lot more precise. And that's why in part of the police or military where you require, for example, shooting at a target, you want more precision. Also, they found that the less your heart rate elevates during a stressful event, the less likely you are to do something stupid, okay? So it's actually beneficial in sports requiring precision and even motor skill to have a better cardiovascular system, because as soon as your heart rate reaches a certain level, you will lose precision. Your movement will become too fast, and that just doesn't work.
Ken Kanakin posted a while ago a clip of Charlie Francis at one of the earlier Swiss symposiums speaking about capillarization of the body and aerobic work.
Yeah.
So for those who want to see more on that, take a look at, you can just Google it, the Swiss videos, the Swiss symposium, Charlie Francis. You can purchase the videos or sign up for membership to this, see all the Swiss symposium lectures. So there's probably over 1,000 lectures that you can watch. It's a great resource. So it's not just a couple people believing in it. It's having some improvement in aerobic capacity regardless of your sport, your event. It is still going to be beneficial to you. We're not saying go to the extreme and do marathons. We're saying you need a dose-response relationship to improve the performance.
It can even be something like Louis Simmons, for example, who introduced sled dragging. I mean, the West Side guys, they don't just do heavy sled drags and heavy prowler push. Sometimes they do 20 minutes of sled drag with a light weight. And that I know, because originally when I completely destroyed a gym floor because of an article I wrote. I read in, I think, 1999 by Louis Simmons about sled drag. It was like the first article about sled dragging, and I found that to be revolutionary. And I was preparing for the national championship in weightlifting, and I needed to drop a weight class if I had any chance of not looking completely idiotic. But I figured, well, if I just do it through diet, then I'm going to get weaker because I'm going to lose muscle, which is not necessarily true, but that's what I believe at the time. So I figured, well, you know what? If I had 20, 30 minutes of sled drag after every workout, I can maintain my caloric intake and I will be able to lose that weight while also increasing my glutes and hamstring, which would help me pull bigger weights. The thing is, I was working at a gym back then that had brand new rubber flooring. And sleds didn't exist back then, okay? Or if they did, I didn't see any in Quebec. So I just took a big 45-pound plate and like wrapped a chain in them and attached it to my weight belt, and I would walk around the gym in circles. And also, of course, I would always make the same path. Dude, it must have been like half an inch deep before I realized I was completely destroying the flooring.
Did they kick you out?
No, actually, I said I'm going to resign, but they actually refused a resignation. Now, I wasn't a big name back then. They should have fired me, but for some reason, they kept me in.
Not bad. So another question had to do with, oops, I just lost it here, is info on the Omni method.
Omni Contraction, yeah. Omni Contraction is this, okay, and I want to make one thing, just general introduction. Omni Contraction system is one of the systems I use with athletes. It is based on the concurrent use of eccentric, isometric, and concentric work. Personally, the way I do it is we have 3 whole body workouts per week, and one is eccentric based, one is isometric focus, and one is concentric focus. And I want to make one thing clear. It is not a form of triphasic training that annoys the shit out of me. First, because I actually wrote about it 9 years before triphasic was written. And by that time, I had been using that system for 10 years. I've been using that for close to 20 years. I'm not saying I didn't, quote unquote, take it from somebody, but that somebody was Jean-Pierre Heger. Jean-Pierre Heger was the coach of shot putter Werner Gunther. I mean, you can go on, if you want to be impressed by an athlete, go on YouTube and type Werner Gunther's training. The videos are in French, but the images speak for themselves. It basically explains his training system. And I saw that video, the original tape, when I was in university, and it completely blew my mind. And that's when I started working eccentric, isometric, and concentric in my training program. So I've been using that ever since I saw that video 20 years ago. And I wrote about it in an article called Super Beast on T Nation in 2003, and several articles after that. And in my second book, Theory and Application of Modern Strength and Power Methods, which was written, I think, in 2007, all several years before triphasic. Also, a big difference is that Carl Dietz uses more of a, he doesn't use a concurrent approach. He will use eccentric contraction for a phase, isometric for a phase, concentric for a phase, plyometric for a phase. Whereas me, I use all contraction types in every training phase. And the logic behind that is each contraction type has a different recruitment pattern. I mean, you can't train the eccentric to prepare for isometric. Yes, there will be some transfer, but if you want to be good at eccentric, you need to train eccentric. If you want to be good at isometric, you need to train isometric. So that's why I train everything in every phase, because when you stop training it, you will lose some motor skills, okay? Second is that I want to be explosive with an athlete in every type of contraction. Explosive eccentric, which would mean absorbing force. I want to be strong, explosive isometric, which means the moment just before reversing that absorption and pushing, or just halting your body. And then I also want to be powerful concentrically. But to me, it requires periodization, okay? So you start with eccentric, concentric, isometric for more quote unquote accumulation methods. Lower loads, more volume to build the structures, build tendons, build muscle, improve technique. Because one of the main benefits of, for example, slow eccentrics and adding pauses in the lift is that you improve technical efficiency. To me, an accumulation phase, the purpose of an accumulation phase is not to build muscle. And it shouldn't be for anybody, not when training athletes. Anyway, an accumulation phase lasting 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, you're not going to build tons of muscle in 4 to 6 weeks, right? So the real goal of an accumulation phase is to prepare the body for the heavier lifting to come. That means strengthening tendons. It means building some muscle. It means developing the motor skill to control loads, improve technique, improve movement. So when you are moving on to heavy loads, you are less likely getting injured and your performance will be higher. So it's periodized. I want to be first do the volume work for eccentric, isometric, concentric to prepare all 3 types of contraction. Then we move on to the next phase, which is you want to be strong in all 3 types of contraction. Then finally, you want to be explosive in all 3 types of contraction. So that's why I believe that when you're working with that system, you need to train all contraction types in every phase. And you gradually go from structural work to strength work to power work. Of course, you will always maintain strength during the power phase. That's a given because it's part of the power production equation, but you dramatically reduce the amount of strength work you're doing.
Yeah, and it's great that you're able to actually touch on how you implement all 3 within the same phase, as opposed to how it's been kind of popularized by others of, okay, do eccentric work here, isometric here, and then concentric work here, and then plyometrics, which does a little bit of eccentric and concentric, but you still miss out on some of that transfer by not working all 3 at the same time or simultaneously.
Some people it works. I mean, that's the thing, okay? And Carl is great. I mean, and anybody who uses all 3 types of contraction is good in my book. I mean, it's better than not training those contractions. It's just not ideal to not train them for a while. I mean, it works with naturally gifted athletes. The reason is that those who are naturally gifted athletes, those who learn a movement like that, okay? They try something and they're good at it right away. They can just look at somebody do a movement and they can copy it perfectly. Okay, the great natural athletes. Okay, these guys have amazing transfer capacity from one movement to the other, and more importantly, they have great motor skill retention. That is all due to the neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter involved in learning and motor learning, and also in recall of stored information, and in creativity, and putting two things in your brain that you learn together into a new movement pattern. These guys don't have to practice something over and over and over to keep it. Good example, most elite CrossFit athletes are like that. The reason why they can be so great is that they don't need to practice every single skill involved in CrossFit all the time. Matt Fraser, greatest CrossFitter of all time, for the last 2 or 3 years of his career, didn't do any heavy Olympic lifting. He was a national champion in weightlifting as a junior. He was snatching 140 kilos at 18 years of age. So for him, that skill was acquired. Someone who's great at maintaining those motor skills, once they get their muscle ups, they don't have to practice it every week. It's there forever. Me, I need to practice my skill all the time. If I stop a movement, I need to relearn it again. And it's the same thing with contraction types. Someone who has great motor skill learning and great retrieval of information because of acetylcholine, they don't need to practice those 3 contraction types. Once it's learned, once the movement pattern has been learned, then you know what, they don't need to refresh it. They will maintain it. Now, if you work with elite hockey players, these guys are which is the clientele that Carl works with, these guys have great motor skills. Those who make it to the highest levels have great motor skills. I've worked with tons of pro myself, lots of NHLers. They all have amazing motor skill acquisition for the most part. I mean, you have grinders out there, but it's mostly skilled guys. So these guys don't need to practice something all the time. But for 90% of the people out there, if you stop training a type of contraction, you will lose some of the gains. Now, you might not need it. So if your sport doesn't need eccentric actions, maybe you don't need to train it all the time. You can just use it to work on technique, work on recruitment of synergistic muscle and stuff like that. But everybody else, when they need it, you should train all 3 types of contraction for most phases. You don't have to use it the same way I do with my my system, which uses 3 days, 1 eccentric, 1 isometric, 1 concentric. Even myself, when I'm working with an athlete who's been on my system for 2 or 3 years, we don't do that anymore. We train physical capacities. So one day would be strength, one day could be speed strength, one day could be strength speed. And eccentric and isometric component will be peppered in there just to maintain it. But once they've been on the system for 2 or 3 years, they don't need to focus on these. I mean, you look at Gab, the bobsleigh guy I'm training, he was doing eccentrics overload with 700 pounds on the squats, pausing for 3 seconds at parallel, then going back down and then releasing the release and squatting back up. What, he's going to use 800 pounds on the eccentric? It doesn't make sense. It's too dangerous anyway. So it's a great tool, but it's not something that I use forever with athletes. My goal is actually to get them to move away from the system as fast as I can, because it means the system is doing its job and making them strong in all contraction types. And I just need to maintain it by peppering some work here and there.
A great point you made there was in regards to when you're dealing with professionals, they're already that 1%. They're the creme de la creme, as the French like to say. They're the top genetic gifts within their sport. So their skill acquisition is already beyond everyone else. That's what actually got them to that level in the sport. So they're able to acquire and keep a skill longer with less effort. The vast majority of people that we're all going to deal with, unless we're strictly dealing with the pros, it's important to keep in mind that a lot of the training methods that we see out there that are geared towards the pros and the pros only aren't going to be as effective for those at the lower levels or developmental. Yes, you're going to have the outliers that was 5-10% at each end. The ones who you wonder how they are able to tie their shoes and walk, and then those where you're surprised that Why are they even here and not already being paid at 12 years old? They're just that genetically gifted. So we have to keep in mind that the system Christian is talking about works with all of them, but those who are at the higher end are going to need to spend less time within it, and he's able to then progress them out of the system and, in a way, have more fun with them. Whereas the majority of trainees are going to need to stay in a system like that longer, which, while it might seem mundane or redundant for them, is going to pay off with bigger dividends for them down the road. And it might get them that opportunity to then play at that pro level, or at least get paid or a scholarship in some cases.
You know, one of the biggest issues I had in my career was that I was lucky enough and unlucky enough to right away, when I started working as a strength coach, I started working with pro athletes right off the bat. Because I was in this very small Canadian town, Quebec town, with like pretty much, that was like 22 years ago, and strength coaching was not really a thing. And the only guy who was doing strength coaching in our town was my high school football coach, who actually became my college strength coach. And then I started coaching football with him after my coaching career. He's the one who taught me the Olympic lift and stuff like that. And he was the only one working with every athlete in the town. Okay. So we had maybe a dozen pro hockey players, like AHL and NHL. We had tons of junior major players and stuff like, and of course the football players. And what happened is that he was looking for someone to teach the Olympic lifts to these athletes. And since I was by that point a decently competent Olympic lifter, he asked me to do that. And I quickly became basically the guy who was working in the trenches with these guys, and he was writing the programs. And the year after that, he just gave me the whole contract. So I started working because he had a new job at a high school. He was sport director and stuff like that. So after 1 year of strength coaching, I was coaching pro hockey players. And by that time, I was also coaching national level figure skaters, which was my second contract, which is hard because I actually don't know how to skate. So that was kind of funny. But
you're French Canadian?
Yeah, well, dude, my motor skills suck. And anyway, so for the first 10, 12 years of my career, I worked mostly with high-level clients like that. And when I got married, I moved to the States. Then I moved back to Canada when I got married in another small Canadian town, this time with very few athletes. So I started working as a personal trainer at a local gym. And some people see it as a step down. I don't. I mean, it was super fun, and it was a different clientele. But everything I did with the pros didn't work at all with a Gen Pop client. So I had to completely change my paradigm. I mean, just when I thought that I had this trading thing figured out to a T, I mean, dude, I wrote 2 books. At that point, I had written like 300 articles. I know my shit. Dude, nothing I did worked with the personal training clients. So I needed to completely relearn. But the point is that you need to understand that if you work with a specific clientele, what you do and works will not necessarily work with other clienteles. And to me, I think that the most skilled coaches are oftentimes the personal trainers, not the strength coaches. Because the personal trainers, they need to work with a much more diverse clientele, requiring a lot more skills, not to mention more patience and more psychological skills. You need to be a psychologist as much as a coach when working with. And you know what? I actually invented CrossFit, right? That's actually seriously. I mean, that's how I trained my personal training clients for a while. That's how I trained them, especially the women, because I mean, I'm someone, and it doesn't look like it when I do a webcast or a podcast, but I'm extremely antisocial. I mean, I'm super shy. I don't like talking to people, and I generally think that people are stupid, and anyway. So when I was working with athletes, they're like super performance driven. So I was fine with it. But now you work with Gen Pop clients. Between sets, They want to talk about their daughter's wedding. They want to talk about the dress they knit for their niece. They want to talk about their boyfriend who kicked her out, something like that. I'm not going to have any of that shit, right? So I started doing circuits. And because I come from Olympic weightlifting, those circuits were a mix of Olympic Olympic lifts, jumps, metabolic work like crawlers, stuff like that, striking a sledgehammer, like cool stuff, because these guys, well, you know what? Sometimes they just need to be entertained and have the illusion that they're working hard. So yeah, I invented CrossFit. I just didn't have the money that comes with it. It's funny. One of my clients, one of the first I trained that way, because he was talking all the time. I mean all the time. And if you follow sports, you understand what I'm saying. It was Joe Buck. Joe Buck, who works for Fox Sport, does the NFL, does Major League Baseball. He's probably their main sportscaster. I mean, he's a super funny dude. But for some reason, and he's not at all the guy you imagine when you're watching his broadcast on TV. He is literally a 12-year-old kid. And when we were training, in his mind, his duty was to amuse me. So it was literally like training my 12-year-old nephew. So I just needed to keep him entertained. But he was super happy because he told me, you know what? When I'm training with you, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. Anyway. So I invented
That's one thing that with general population we have to also keep in mind is they have to feel like they did something. Yeah. If they don't, well, are they going to want to dole out their $50 to $200 for that session?
But
Fuck no.
It goes back to what
they want to feel like they did something.
It has to go back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, an athlete has a goal. I need to be ready for training camp. I need to get better shape to score more goals to get paid. Pro bodybuilders, I need to be ripped for that competition. Could be I want to get ready for national championships. But when you're working with someone who just wants to be in better shape, that's not a goal. Being in better shape is not a goal. Losing some weight is not a goal, okay? A goal is precise, it's specific, and it has a certain deadline, okay? It's something that drives you. It drives you. That's your main focus. For most of the personal training clients, the training is more of an afterthought than a true goal, okay? So that's why sometimes making training fun might be part of the deal. Remember what I said earlier. I mean, if you're performance driven, if you're goal driven, you don't need the variation, because seeking that goal, seeing each workout as the next stepping stone to beat will provide enough adrenaline and dopamine. Whereas someone like an average Joe client, you need two things. First, they need daily achievements. It could be super small, but they need a daily achievement. It could be technical. It could be performance related. It could be anything. But you, at the beginning of a workout, establish a goal to reach. And if they reach, even if it's super small, because if they accomplish that goal, well, first during the workout, it gives them a target to shoot for. But if they get it, they get a dopamine response. Dopamine is the pleasure neurotransmitters. It will reinforce them coming back to the gym and being motivated to come back. So it will make them train harder over time. And by shooting for a goal, they get the adrenaline. So you need short-term goal, even if it's super, super small, for each workout. They need to feel like they're accomplishing something at every workout. And that's why a lot of Gen Pop clients actually become stimulus addict. Once they are hooked on training, they will always ask for more. Coach, I've seen this dude on Instagram do this curl variation. Do you think we could add it? Or I seen Booty Girl 253 on Instagram do a cool glute exercise on that pec deck machine over there, because like that's the thing with like Insta babes, right? You need to turn every single machine into a glute exercise. Can we try it? Because they need to feel like they're accomplishing something. If they don't get results or proof they're getting results, That's the purpose of those short-term goals, because muscle gain and even fat loss, body composition changes, it's slow. It takes time. And it's so slow that even if it's happening, you don't even see it. So they need something measurable daily, or otherwise they will turn to something else for validation. And the number one thing is volume. Because, well, you know what? I might not like be jacked yet, but nobody works harder than me, right? Or I'm gonna do some crazy exercise like power clean dumbbells on a Swiss ball. Well, that guy is stronger than me, but I don't see him be able to do that. It's just another way to feel good about yourself, to get that adrenaline and dopamine rush. That's why if you want your client to stay motivated, stay the course, and avoid those pitfalls, establish short-term goals. Every workout, you should have one objective for that workout. It doesn't need to be performance related. Just find something that if the client achieves that, he wins the workout.
That's an excellent point. That actually allows us to also get into another question that just came in is creative ways to train the tibialis anterior.
Really? We're doing this, right?
Yeah, that's the question.
Dude, I've never actually had anybody do a calf exercise in my life.
Really?
No. Once. I think in all the clients I've ever trained, I've used a direct calves exercise with one or two guys, and they were competitive bodybuilders.
Interesting.
And I get that training the tibialis anterior can decrease shin splints and stuff like that. And in sprinting, it does play a minor role. But honestly, I'm literally the worst person to ask that question. And I'm not ashamed to say that it's not something I'm comfortable giving advice on.
Okay, well,
anyway,
I have one that
a coach who claims
like with this one,
we have a slight lag.
Sorry?
We have a slight lag.
Yeah, you were just saying?
I was saying that a coach who pretends or claims to know the answer to everything is a coach you should run away from. Nobody knows all the answers.
Yeah, but for this one at our gym, we have we actually use the power curl bar from Watson, and because it works out perfectly because it's got one side that's padded and one side that's kind of steel that you would kind of, if you're doing curls, the pad would sit here and you'd hold the actual handle. But for tibialis anterior work, you put your top of your foot in where the pad is, and your heel is where the harder part is, and then you load up the far end with plates, and then you're able to work anterior tibialis doing just tib raises that way.
I'm totally doing that tomorrow.
One way that You're which?
I'm totally doing that tomorrow.
I'll send you a video of it. It looks really funny when people do it, but the number of shin splints, because I've dealt with a lot of soccer players that have had shin splint issues, and the number of shin splint issues since then, I've been fortunate that it's dramatically decreased. Yeah. But for a few of them, what it's actually done is increase their kicking distance.
Yeah, I could see that.
So in some cases, it helps them. Yeah. So if they're a keeper, they're able to clear the ball better. Mm-hmm. If they're a striker, well, if they can hammer the ball just a little bit harder, yeah, it's a goal or not a goal. And some,
I could see that being beneficial.
Yeah, like it's one of those, like, tibialis anterior work doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah. Literally, just find a way to load up the front of the foot to pull it towards your knee. You don't have to get creative with, we got to touch band, X, Y, Z, rotation, invert the foot, evert the foot. Just find a way to get the muscle stimulated. You can even do heel walks, and you're able to stimulate the muscle. Mm. All right, so let's see. We don't have another question popping in, so that leads to a question that I have for Tibbs is, as we are slowly, especially in Canada, very slowly coming out of this pandemic year, what is something that you want to see happen within the industry moving forward?
Well, I actually had this conversation with Dave Lipson. You know who that guy is? Dave Lipson. He's
Nope.
well, also in the fitness industry. He's probably better known for being the significant other of Camille Leblanc-Bazinet. Anyway,
Oh, okay.
and one thing I was saying is that it will, if there's anything, first of all, it will lead to the growth of home gyms, right? People will a lot more people will have equipped themselves at home. So that will have two benefits, in my opinion. It will lead to the growth of online training, but that's a positive and a negative. I mean, I think there's nothing worse than online coaching being done by someone who actually doesn't coach people, because I do both. And one thing I can guarantee you is that online coaching is a shit ton harder than in-person coaching if you do it properly, because you're not there to see the client. You have to ask for videos, because most clients, they're not inclined to send you videos. I literally have to clear my cell phone every 2 or 3 days, because every client send me at least 3 videos of each workout. I receive literally like 30 videos every single day. So that's why you don't really need to send me that tibialis video. It will get dumped really fast. Anyway, so because you need to send feedback like right away. Like, for example, I started coaching this young kid. He's actually the son of one of my clients, and he's super young. He's 7. So of course it's doing just basic stuff. But I said, well, you need to send me video during the workout. And I because I want to be able, if I can, to comment right away, because you don't want to have a kid do improper movement patterns. But it's the same thing with any client. You need to be able to coach. You don't just give them a program and then just hope for the best. Okay, you need to actually do coaching, and it requires video analysis, which is a lot harder than in-person training. Okay, and most clients don't have the reflex to send it to you, so you need to have the discipline to ask for it and then send feedback, which you have to write all the time. And it's much harder to be able to design a proper program if you don't see the client, because if a client walks in and he's super tired, well, you know what? I need to adjust the volume down. You can't do that with online coaching unless the client tells you exactly how he feels before the workout and you're able to comment. So it's much, much, much harder to train someone online than in person. But I believe that the competent coaches, that will open a window of opportunity in that regard. The second thing that I think it will do good for a field is that it will have reignited the focus on the big basic barbell lifts or free weight exercise, dumbbells, barbells, which in my opinion should be 90% of your training volume. Okay. I mean, there are some things you will do better with a machine, like a leg curl, for example. You really can't do, well, you can do a Nordic hamstring curl or glute ham raise, but most people can't do these. So it's really hard to do something better than the leg curl. But very few exercises are best done with machines. But I think that many coaches move away from that and give their clients either easy exercises, because you don't need to coach a lot on the leg press. Well, actually you should, but most people don't. But now maybe because themselves, they had to train at a home gym and they learned to rely more on the big basic lifts. So maybe they will introduce them and focus more on them with their clients. That's my hope. Also, I believe that, and I hope so, that the clients will come back to the gym, because one thing we will see, there will be less people coming back to the gym, because let's face it, of all the people who come to the gym, there's a large proportion who only do it for social reasons. And after 1 year away from the gyms, they might have found a different way to get their social need. Maybe they found a different hobby. But those who will come back will have a renewed appreciation for training, and they will value it more, and they are likely to want to invest more in it. So I think there will be an opportunity for personal trainers and coaches out there, because the clientele will, in my opinion, be more willing and ready to invest in proper coaching. At least that's my hope.
Well, I can say personally that in Ottawa, every time that we've opened, like Ottawa's been opened and closed 3 or 4 times. Montreal's been closed since the end of September. Toronto's been closed basically all year. They've been open for a total of 2 months in the last year. California just is reopening. Yeah. And a lot of the places that were personal training specific or smaller facilities are seeing a bit of an uptick in personal training volume because people are now realizing, fuck, I only get one life and I need to be fucking healthier. Mm-hmm. And this whole past year has kind of opened people's eyes to, wait, adjusting for age, obesity is the number one comorbidity. But when you look at the statistics across a whole bunch of different diseases, it's a corresponding factor in just about every major lifestyle disease there is. And people have cued into that a bit more. And people who were more active before in going to the gym, big gym chains, I don't know what it's going to be like in Quebec or in other jurisdictions, but in Ontario especially, you have to book your time slot in the gym for 1 hour, and it's limited to 10 or 50 people. After that hour, they kick your ass out. There's no more lollygagging around, taking 3 hours to do a 20-minute workout. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who who use the gym as a bit of a social expression, because if it gets, in my eyes, if it gets people in the door regardless and they do something, it's better than doing nothing. But now that people are going to have a bit of a fire lit under their ass, they might not actually know what to do to be able to do 3 hours in one. So they might look and seek out that professional expertise more readily in the larger gyms, or go to the smaller gyms where that's all that's offered. And now they can have that focused dedication and accountability and keep them going at a higher level. Hopefully it's the same everywhere.
That's one thing I notice here is that the private facilities are doing much better than the big gyms. There are some...
When they're open.
Yeah. Well, we've been open. Here we've been open. Montreal is not open yet. But here's the thing. That's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard, okay? Because there's a lot of illogical decisions making in that COVID situation, right? My wife does CrossFit. I mean, I still love her. I mean, nobody's perfect. I mean, I'm personally, I don't like her family, so that's my issue. She loves CrossFit. That's her issue. Anyway, so she started going back to the gym. And, she started going back to the box. At least she still trained twice per week at home and doing like real stuff. So that's fine. Anyway, there's a limited number of clients you can have per square foot. Okay. So in our CrossFit groups, you can only be 10 at the same time. That's fine. I mean, I understand that. Anyway, normally it's 15 people per class. So that 10 it's still pretty good. But here's the stupid thing, the completely illogical thing. Okay. The provincial government said that the only thing allowed when it comes to training is doing your own workout. One-on-one private coaching is allowed. Group training is not allowed. Okay. So they can train at CrossFit. They can do their workout, but the coach is not allowed to coach. So he's just standing there and just clapping, because if he's coaching, it's a group class. If he's not coaching, it's a group of people in a room doing the same workout.
Oh, fuck, that's stupid.
It is.
Oh. Sometimes our governments make decisions that we will never understand. They make them based on information that they're given from people, in many cases, who have never stepped foot into a facility since Jane Fonda first became popular, since before I was born. For those in Canada, when Body Break was a big thing. For those of you in the US and whatnot, when Suzanne Summers blew up. Before Jillian Michaels decided to go down the cash cow route. That's when the last time some of these public health officials actually stepped foot into a gym to see how we are actually, if they've ever been, to see how we are actually their friend in the whole process of improving the lives and health of people. I know almost every single one of my clients actually. Each time we reopen, and since we've been able to be open, ever since the first shutdown happened and reopening, the first thing that they said was, I just needed this for my mind. So it's like the mental toll and the mental release that our clients all get from coming to the gym is just as beneficial to them as that physical exertion. and I've noticed an uptick in just their effort level. Those who are kind of like, you have to light a fire under their ass just to get them off to do a warm-up. Now they're actually more self-reliant, and they're a lot more wanting to do it. They've got more motivation in themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as we wrap all this up, Christian, this is where we'll get you to kind of plug your social channels and your website, as well as your education platform. Yes, this is where you get to whore yourself out.
Which I won't.
As much as you just like to do that.
That's not something. But with my Instagram, basically, it's just like type ThibArmy in anything, and you'll find on Facebook, you'll find on Instagram. ThibArmy.com is the website, and that's also where all the online courses are, the articles are. So pretty easy to find.
All right. So I'm going to thank Christian for coming back on for another one of these. Those of you trying to get in touch with him, just connect with him via social media channels. We'll also put a link to his YouTube channel as well, since how he's been trying to push that a little bit in private without actually pushing it to the world as hard as he really should be. And going forward, everyone stay healthy, get back into the gym, enjoy yourself. And Christian, thank you very much for your time.
Yes, sir.